Below the Table, I'm Amy.
I'm Steve.
I'm Jonathan.
And today we're doing the final stint of my top 10. So my top 10 games of all time.
Woohoo!
Are you ready?
Ready.
Oh, yes.
We're ready.
Let's go.
Oh goody, it's number 10.
First up today, we've got Scythe.
Ah.
Very good choice. Probably heavier than a lot of the other things you already mentioned, actually.
Yeah, probably. But I don't feel it's that heavy. I don't know. I think I've just played it so much now that it's just like second nature. Like, let's roll into some Scythe.
I think there's a steep learning curve. But
Yeah.
once you've learnt it, I don't think it's that heavy.
No, not at all. I think the second time I ever played it, Steve thrashed me in about 30 minutes flat.
That sounds familiar.
And from that moment on, I was like, right, I'm getting better at this game. I need to learn to be better.
I don't remember that.
No, it was before I started working at the cafe. It was
Okay.
long before. But I really enjoy it. I think it's a great miniatures game. I think it's probably the only miniatures game on my list. Probably. Yeah, I don't think that's a big element of it for me. Like, if it wasn't a miniatures game, I don't think I'd be bothered. I still really enjoy the mechanics. I think the fact that you can have randomised boards that match together with the actions is really important. I think it's a really good mechanic that makes the game more interesting because different players are always going to be forced to play different tactics.
Yep.
I know that you can't come into the game and, Jonathan's going to do his usual thing, because I know you can't do your usual thing, because there isn't a usual thing. Sometimes there are player boards that match up really well, and when you realise you've got those ones, you're like, psh, nice. And then, kind of from then on in, you're like, right, you kind of know what tactic you're going to have to play based on what boards you get given at the beginning. Sometimes that's not something that people look at straight away with Scythe, and it's certainly a learnt thing. But yeah.
Yeah, when you said it was a miniatures game, I'm like, oh yeah, it is.
It is.
In my head, I don't consider it a miniatures game.
It is. Like, a lot of people consider it that way, and that's why the price point is so high and things like that.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't think it needs a lot of that. It does bring in the appeal for a lot of people that you're kind of stomping through and taking over, but...
It's hugely popular. It's a very good
Yeah.
game. Very good engine builder. I was always happy to play this.
Yeah.
It's much more of a Euro
Yeah.
than you think it's going to be when you look at it. But it does a really good job of that. I love the engine building.
Yeah.
That mechanism where you take the cubes off the top
And
which
upgrade
reduces
them.
the cost.
Yeah. Oh,
And then you put them at
Lovely.
the bottom.
Well, you get...
Well, the bottom's the cost, isn't it?
yeah.
so you upgrade and everything
getting
becomes
extra things
cheaper.
by
You're making
Yeah.
the top action more efficient and the bottom action cheaper.
Yeah. That's just a great mechanism
It's
because
a-
there's so much choice.
Great.
Yeah.
But you're not doing it from there to there. You can do it from there and you can put it in.
And you
That's
can put
right.
it wherever you fancy.
So
and
it's
it's
just 6 cubes.
streamlining
It's like I
your
can take it
game.
from here or here or here and put it here or here or here or here. It's like so many options.
Yeah,
You've
it's
also
great.
got that relying on what your neighbours are doing as well.
Yeah.
So when you
Yes.
enlist, you're like, okay, right, I really want this, but what are they likely to... Well, she's got a pile of iron. Oh, okay, she's
Yeah.
probably going to,
Yeah.
deploy
And
next.
The player abilities, I think, make it quite an interesting game. They're not overpowered, but they're interesting enough
Yeah.
to keep the game varied. So I like the unique player abilities as well, and the fact that they have been considered based on your starting tile as well. So the person who can go across water is still limited in where they can go and how fast it takes them to get to certain places still allows the other characters to catch up to them by deploying the river walking mech. So it doesn't... I don't think any of the powers are overpowered, but I think they are all crucial to making the game a bit more interesting and varied for people.
I think if they were overpowered, you'd get at the start of the game, right, okay, we're not letting him have that power. Or,
Yeah.
I think you'd get that. Or you've got to
think
start,
it's-
you've got to... You don't get as much money. If you're going to pick that, you don't get as much money. Or
It's clearly been tested incredibly thoroughly before being published, and I think it's just made an absolutely exceptional game.
Agreed.
Unbelievable. It's number 9.
Hero Realms.
Ah, that's a good choice.
I haven't played it.
What? Have you played Star Realms?
Nope.
Oh my gosh, okay. Well, some people might be torn with me on this one. I think a lot of people are going to steer towards Star Realms because they like the theme, and I can totally appreciate that. But I think Hero Realms, for me, takes the cake because you can play... It's not strictly a two-player game, and I prefer to play this style of deck builder with more players, and normally I play Hero Realms with 4 people, and we play with all of the expansions. I've got the campaign, and that's amazing too. I like the bosses, I like everything, and I've just got everything, and I've kickstarted everything that's to come. So I spent a lot of money on a Kickstarter a while back that's due soon, hopefully. I think December was the estimate, so fingers crossed. And hopefully then I'll have sleeves and a box and all the next stuff, and I just can't wait. I think it's an exceptional deck builder. I like that it can be cooperative or it can be player versus player. You decide how your game goes. And I think for a deck builder, that's quite unique.
I really, really like it. And I prefer it significantly over Star Realms. And I think the theme is the big issue for me. Star Realms, the theme feels very pasted on.
Yeah.
Although I have to admit there is a certain amount of pasting has gone on with Hero Realms, they've managed to integrate, I think, abilities better, and the fact that you've got
when you add the
personal
character,
deck.
when you add the character expansions in, it really makes the game shine in regards to the theme, which Star Realms doesn't have.
Yeah, so that makes a big difference to me. I feel like I am a wizard or whatever it is.
Yeah, because
as I'm building my deck.
I can do this. This is where I excel. This is my special player power that nobody else can do.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a cleric because I heal people, whereas other people have to earn the cards to be able to do that, whereas I can do it all the time, and things like that. So I think the theme is so strong with Hero Realms that it really calls to adventure, and I think that's what's really nice about the campaign as well, is that you really do feel like you're going adventuring. It feels like, before you sit and play, it feels like you're about to play a D&D session. That's the same feeling I get. We are ready to go out on an adventure. We are going to beat the bad guy and we're going to do it together. And they're so tough. They are really actually very difficult. But you don't lose the game. You get wound back. It's like a video game where you save before you do the boss, and you get wound back a certain amount, and the game will rewind you, and you might get a buff or you might get something taken away from you because you lost, and then you get to go in again and you try again. And you think, okay, right, you do something, you do that differently. You don't do that because that didn't seem to work, and I'll try doing this, and maybe if we all work together, we'll do it.
I'd really like to try the campaign, actually.
It's very good. And you can replay it as well. It's not like a one and done. So I can play it as many times as I want, and when I play with different people, it's going to go a different way. We will choose different upgrades. We will choose to go down different routes at different times.
Okay.
Golly gosh, it's number 8.
More deck builders. Clank!
I've played this one.
I love Clank. It's another deck builder, but this time it's a deck building and adventuring game. You can see my themes here are quite common. I didn't even realise these were next to each other. But basically, you're exploring through a dungeon and your deck is allowing you to do so. It's not combat. It's not combatant. So you're not fighting each other. You're not fighting any monsters. You're just going into the dungeon, grabbing treasure and getting out, and the person who has the most treasure when they get out of the castle is the winner.
And the theme behind this is that you're kind of trying to be sneaky, but you make clank, which is effectively noise, and the more noise you make, the more likely the dragon is to come and attack you. Can't actually beat the dragon off, and the dragon gets more relentless as the game goes on. So you can die, and if you die, your adventure's over. You can still win if you die in the right place. If you die in the top half.
If you're above ground, not below ground, you get kind of carted off by the villagers, and they save your life. So you still score all of the points you get, but you get a bonus if you get to the top of the castle.
And get out without having rescued. But you also, it's like that push your luck element.
Yeah,
like,
massive push your luck element.
This is 10 points, but if I can
just
last
get
a few
there.
more turns, but if I go further in, it's taking me longer to get out, and you've got that little dilemma of how risky do you want to be?
And the other players can be really important in that as well, because you need to be careful, because if I go, okay, I'm going to go those extra few steps, and then Jonathan goes, well, I'll make some more noise then and wake that dragon up, and I'm like, no!
That's always my issue. I always push it too much, and I never get out. Like I think, I think I've calculated this. If I get that treasure, that's not being too greedy. I'll just have enough time to get out, but it never works. As you say, there's always someone else messing up the plans.
Yeah, because as someone's like near the top, they'll be like, well, I want to make as much noise as possible because I'm almost out and they're all still down there.
Yeah.
So then they're trying to make Clank happen on purpose by buying cards from the pool that put more Clank into the bag.
And more dragon attacks come out.
More dragon attacks happen. So as well, if you find a dragon's egg, the dragon gets real mad and the dragon track accelerates. So when you're trying to loot and search for treasure, sometimes dragon eggs will come up. And when someone's on their way out, well, they're wanting to collect as much treasure as possible. But if they grab a dragon egg, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world because they're almost out.
So I have a general problem with deck builds because they're very abstract, I think, generally. Dominion, it was the first, it was classic, but there's no reason for doing what you're doing, whereas this kind of gives you a reason, so I don't have as much aversion to it as I would others.
Yeah, because it's sort of leading towards something.
Yeah. There's a reason for why you're picking this card up over that card, because you need to move further, or because you need to do that better.
Crikey, it's number 7.
Azul.
Original?
The OG original, yeah. I think Azul sometimes isn't given as much credit as it deserves for how tactical it can be. I think it really takes quite a strong mind to really get all of the tactics behind Azul and the various ways that you can play. I think I prefer the original Azul because there's less inclination to play in a style that attempts to screw over your opponents, because that doesn't win. It's not an effective style of play. Whereas in the others, you could argue that is an effective style of play to prevent other people from progressing. Whereas in regular Azul, I think it really is about your board.
I think Azul is a great choice. You just can't really go wrong with it.
No.
It appeals to so many people. I personally do prefer the new one, Summer Pavilion. And I think mainly because sometimes in the original Azul, you can just get a bit done in by the draw in terms of how people happen to be taking the tiles. Even if they're not setting out to do you win, it's like they've taken that and taken that. It's like, oh, I'm going to get stuck with a massive pile. I'm going to lose lots of points. And there's very little you can do about that, I think.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen a lot, but every now and then you just get screwed over.
I think it's incredibly tactical two-player, because I was commentating on this at the World Mind Sports Olympiad, and in the two-player where doing someone else in is a benefit because it's your only opponent. You can do that. Like, well, this will score me more points, but if I take these instead, actually, I'm not going to score as much, but they're going to take tiles they don't want. And is that a better way of doing it? You've got a bit more control about, when you end the game and that sort of thing. So I think it is an incredibly tactical game. I'm so glad I picked it up when I saw it at Essen before it got all the buzz.
Yeah, I think as well the fact that it can be played so well two-player. I think that's when a game shines. I think sometimes a two-player sticker can be tacked on to a lot of games, because technically, yes, you can play it two-player.
It becomes a lot nastier two-player.
Yeah, I can imagine, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I've played it two-player a fair amount and still really enjoyed it. A lot of games fail to have that sort of dynamic edge to it when it's reduced to two players. Whereas I think Azul still keeps up that the core of the game. It still holds up really well.
You like your two-player abstracts, don't you?
Yeah.
And so, it's number 6.
Next is Splendor.
Okay.
I think it feels a very similar way. It feels a very similar gap to Azul.
It does, yeah. It tops it for me above Azul, though. I can't really put my finger on for why. I think again, it just I play Splendor slightly more aggressively than I play Azul. Yeah. So I think some people are surprised by the way I play in Splendor. It is very, I just go straight for points. Like, I don't mess about with collecting. It's just go for gold and that's it. But I really enjoy it. I think there's a lot of tactics in it. I like the thinking. I like the thinkiness of it. Although it's a very simple game, it's very easy to learn, hard to master. If you've ever watched Splendor tournaments, with some people that have been playing for years and games that only last 6 turns, it's insane. It's crazy. I think it really is a hard game to master, and I think that's why I love it so much. It's just that you can just keep getting better and better and better. Although I do regret teaching my partner how to play the style that I do, because he beat me in a competition in France and he was first and I was second and it was not okay. So I was really miffed at that because he picked it up so well learning off me, and I was like, oh.
I think it's really, really good. The thing I probably like most about it is that when you first play, at least coming from like our background, the kind of games that Steve and I tend to play, it feels like an engine builder. Oh, you get this card, and it makes the other ones cheaper. So it's like, well, let's build an engine. But then you discover...
Too late.
That's right.
Yeah.
Somebody who's just going for the big point straight away, you think, no, that can't be a viable strategy, and then they beat you. So, but obviously there's a certain amount of engine building definitely helps.
Yeah,
but you can't go too far down that road.
No, you've got to know when that crucial moment is. If you're going with the engine building tactic, you need to know when to go for the kill, because when you're engine building, you've got to be going for the nobles.
Yeah.
Whereas my tactic, the one that I usually employ, I can't go for nobles because I don't get enough cards.
Yeah.
I physically don't get enough cards throughout the entire game to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas that's when someone can slip in and beat me.
Okay.
Is when somebody goes for the
I
nobles.
think without the nobles, engine building is just not viable.
Yes.
It's not. No, it's just not. So you've got to be going for something clear there to be able to catch up with somebody like myself that would just go, cool, that's worth points, I'll have that.
Should have won Game of the Year. Can't believe it didn't.
Yeah.
It's really upsetting.
Marvellous. It's number 5.
Next is Sulkin.
Oh, my goodness. There's a change.
Yeah, but you didn't expect that, did you?
No.
Thought it might be a couple of shockers.
Great choice, though.
Yeah, it's great. I only played it a few years ago. I don't actually know when it came out, but I've played the heck out of it since. I love it. I'm not great at it, not at all, to be honest, but I really find myself enjoying every single time I play. When Teotihuacan came out and everyone was like, oh, maybe it's as good as Sulkin, I was like, no, nothing's going to be as good as Sulkin, and I still prefer Sulkin. I think the mechanics are great, where you've got to make sure that you've built a little bit of an internal engine for your turn order, knowing when you're going to have to place your workers for them to go around enough on the track for you to take them off to most efficiently use your actions. And then also keeping an eye on those ever important temple tracks. I love it.
I'm also not very good at Sulkin, but still really enjoy playing it. Which is funny. I kind of get lost in all the wheels and the tracks and
it's
the
just so
resources.
fun.
Don't ignore the temples.
Never ignore the temple tracks. They're so overpowered. But that's what I mean. I'm not great at it. And quite often in people's top 5s and top 10s, you do find that it's all the games that they are super good at.
Okay.
Well, this is comfortably sitting mid-spot in my top 10, and I'm not great at it. Yeah, most people could probably have a real good shot at beating me, and I would still have had a thoroughly enjoyable experience and really enjoyed playing. So, I think it's excellent.
I think it's excellent too. I think it's better than Teotihuacan by a long way, I think. Yeah. The more I play both of them.
Okay. It's definitely still my favourite of the T series, as it were.
Might not be mine anymore.
Really?
Oh.
I need to play Trismegistus more, I think.
Yeah. I think before anything could overtake this, it's going to take quite a few plays, because I think it's great. I like the expansion as well.
Oh, yes.
It's one of the games that I think the expansion is becoming more and more essential in my play, I think.
Yeah. I really enjoy the player powers at the start, and I think they really make the game shine. I think it makes a slightly more unique player experience.
Yeah, I think it's much better with the expansion.
Well, I never. It's number 4.
Now, this one was a last-minute replacement for me of a similar game, Blood on the Clocktower.
Oh, wow. That's gone in very high, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You've played it once?
I played it once, but it's replaced, essentially, a werewolf-style game that would have gone in this slot.
Okay.
Because it's just trounced all of them.
Yeah.
Like, I was going to put something like Werewolf Legacy here, and then...
That would be my next pick.
Yeah, and then essentially this, I was like, right, I definitely want, in my top 5, like, I love werewolf-style games. I'll probably go with Werewolf Legacy, that sounds about right. Then we played this only about a week ago.
Yeah.
And it is just wiped the floor with every other social deduction game of that style that I played. I want to play more now, and it was absolutely excellent. Essentially, it's a werewolf style game, similar thing, where you have a night phase and a day phase, so a bit like One Night Ultimate Werewolf, but it is sort of a campaign, but it's a campaign in a day, so like you can play it comfortably in one session. You need a GM or a games master, who we have one of the gentlemen by.
Ben Burns.
Oh, he was exceptional.
He goes around the country and demos it.
Yeah,
so,
if you can get yourself in a session, please do it. It's incredible. He was brilliant. I think he's coming back again soon, so I'm going to get myself in the
regular
session.
fortnightly sessions, I think.
Yeah, it was incredible. And it basically, instead of thinking, oh, I could be a villager, or oh, I'm a werewolf, here we go, okay, that's great, I can do something. In this game, absolutely everybody has a player power, but it's not overdone, it's not overcomplicated, it's not thinking, oh my gosh, everyone has a power and it's really confusing and it's awful and I hate that this has changed and that's changed and he's changed roles and she's changed roles and all this has happened, because it's really not like that. The player powers are slightly more deceptive, and some you don't really even notice happen. And it's quite good in that regard. There's also a couple of mechanics that change things around. So someone can be drunk or poisoned, which essentially stops their ability happening.
But they don't know it, do they?
They don't know it. So it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a fantastic mechanic. And the best bit about it for me is that you don't know for sure what the outcome is. So if you get poisoned, then your role might work, or it might not work.
It's up to the GM.
So I was a role where I get told how many of the people on either side of me are bad guys, effectively. So I'd be told there's no bad guys, or one, or they're both bad guys. But I got poisoned at one point in this game. And
Continuously, almost every round.
By my son, I might add. And
who won?
So to start with, I was told there's one bad guy next to me, and it was Noah, as it turns out. But then he kept poisoning me after that, after the guy on the other side of me died. And then I was told for the rest of the game that there were no bad guys next to me. I was like, oh, that's fine, we've killed him,
him,
the bad guy.
he was a baddie.
But actually, Noah was poisoning, which stops it from working.
The best bit is, because you kind of convinced everyone you were good and you were telling the truth.
Yeah.
So all the good people think, well, because we trust Jonathan, and which
so
means...
Noah was off the hook for the entire game. So he was sitting happy-lucky, just going, cool, poison my dad, poison my dad, poison my dad, and just... wiped the floor with everybody. He just won the game. It was incredible. I
think if you've played any of these games before, there's very few games that are strictly better, and this is strictly better than Werewolf. I don't think there's any facet of original Werewolf that is better than this, and I don't think there's anything here it makes it worse on any front.
The other main thing that makes it significantly better is even when you die, because people still get killed in this, you're not eliminated. You still get to take part in the discussions. You know, if you've ever played the original Werewolf and you have those frustrating times where you finally sort of put it all together and then you're killed and you can't say anything, like...
I know who's killed me, yeah.
That's right. But in this, you can keep going and you can keep joining the discussion.
You have one last vote, so you can vote when you're alive, you can vote as many times as you want. Yeah. But when you're dead, you can vote once.
Yeah, they called it a dead vote, so it's your one dead vote.
To vote for someone, you need half of the living players. So when there's 4 people left and there's 11 people killed or whatever... Like, you only need 2 votes. So the dead people have got a really big sway in terms of, like, I think we worked it out. Okay, dead people.
Yeah, we need you. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's absolutely excellent. And it just, although we only played it very recently, it just swooped in and took that spot. Because I know that none of those style games are going to be able to overtake this for me now, at least for a very long while, because I had such an excellent experience.
Extraordinary. It's number 3.
Not long to go now, but here we are with Bedell.
Ah, yes. That's a great choice.
I think these guys might have seen this one coming. I go on about this game loads. I really enjoy it. It's probably one of the only games of this style where sort of I'm only really concentrating on myself. There's not a lot of player interaction other than the worker placement on the main board.
Yep.
And I don't hate that. I like it in this game because I feel like I'm just serenely making my little town of critters, quite happily just going along my own pace of game. I'm not waiting for anybody else. I'm doing my own thing in my own seasons, and it doesn't matter what the other players are doing and what season they're in because it's not really going to affect me.
You've got to beat them to the scoring goals as well. That's the only other thing.
Yeah, but again, like it's not. It can be done at different paces. It totally depends on your play style or what cards you have in your hand or what you had to start out with or what legendary items or critters you may have had at the start of the game can vastly change your pace of game. So,
it reminds me of Race for the Galaxy to a certain extent in that it's about how you combine the different cards.
Yeah.
It's like you can never sort of get all the cards out. You need to use them very wisely and think, I'll be able to do this one matches very well with this one, because you're just not going to have time to build them all. And so the strategy comes in how you assess effectively the card selection in front of you and decide which ones you're going to go for. But the theme is so accessible, and the artwork's superb.
It's got a needless tree that makes it look beautiful, but
I love
it's not
it.
needed.
But it's great.
It is great.
It's got very good table presence.
Build it. It's great. I'm excited to see how the new expansions, there's like a flood of expansions coming that were shown at Essen, I believe, and I'm excited to see how they might change my interpretation of this game, because this one could change dramatically off this list depending on how the expansions do.
Okay.
So I think that'll be crucial.
That won't make it worse for you, because you just don't play with them if you don't like them.
Yeah.
That's true, but then
It can't get much higher either, can it?
no, but it could, because if the expansions are exceptional, then it could scoot its way up a couple of spaces. There's wiggle room.
Okay.
So I think we'll see how that changes my perception of the game. Maybe over time I'll get bored of it, because at the moment there is really limited strategies. So I think hopefully the expansions will allow the longevity of me enjoying Everdell will hopefully continue, because I think that's what it needs. Is just, I think eventually you could get bored.
Okay.
Spiffing. It's number 2.
Number 2 is Betrayal Legacy.
Oh my goodness.
Not played it.
I have to admit, I've not played this either.
I wasn't sure if you had or not.
I was not a huge fan of the original.
That's fine. It's quite different.
Okay.
I am a fan of the original. It probably would have made the list lower down somewhere in the sort of near late 20s, I would have thought, if Legacy hadn't have been so exceptional that it just flew up here for me. I haven't actually finished our campaign yet, but I don't think it matters. I've had so much fun, and for a Legacy game to be replayable, I just think that's brilliant. And the stories are much better, in my opinion, than the base game. So even if you're just in it because you want some more stories, that's fine. They're great. They've got much more flexibility with what you can do and what you can't do. The legacy element really lends itself to Betrayal, in my opinion, because you really do change things as you go along. And I won't spoil anything, but essentially the things that you can change and the things that sort of you name and matter in the game as it goes on, and some items can become very crucial, but it will depend on what you do in your campaign. I've seen it. I've spoken to other people who have played. Their games have been so different to mine already.
Okay.
Like things that just they didn't have in theirs at all, and then things that we've already got, and it's been very, very different.
And you can play it again, so maybe then you can encounter what they've encountered.
Yeah. It's completely replayable, so afterwards the legacy element isn't replayable. It becomes a base game of Betrayal at the end.
All
so
right.
the things that you destroy come back at some point, even if it is just there's some reprinted ones at the end. You can get that back, and so you can play it as a base copy of Betrayal, but with better stories, in my opinion. They are more horror themed. They are genuinely quite mortifying, some of them, and I think they're great. I genuinely think they're excellent. I'm having so much fun with the story element. I think the way they've turned it into a legacy game is great. And I like the legacy format anyway, but I think this one's just taken the cake from me personally.
I got the original game very soon after it came out and loved the idea of it, but obviously I think it's fairly well known now. It's super fiddly, and then you get fair amount of the time, you'll get to the Hornet's Call, isn't it?
Yeah.
Halfway part, and the bad guy starts reading it, is like, what? But and it just doesn't seem to make sense, and then the whole thing just sort of seizes up. Do you feel like they fixed that with the Legacy?
Yeah, massively.
Okay.
Especially in the base game, it's quite commonly known as well that some of the stories are so heavily weighted towards the bad guy or the good guys that it's almost impossible for the other ones to win. Well, in Legacy, they've changed that so that not only are the stories a bit more, they're fairer, there is definitely a better weighting of who can do better, but also depending on who wins, the game changes for better, for worse, to help
Yeah.
either if the person who is the betrayer needs a bit of help next time. So it is a different person every time, obviously, but if the game is sensing that they need a bit of help, then it will steer the game in that direction. Yeah. If it's clear that they won too easily and the villagers need a bit of help, it will steer towards helping the villagers. So it refines the more you play it. And I think that's really lovely. And recurring things happen, which is really nice because it builds a story properly. Okay. So everything sort of links into one another eventually. It's really lovely.
Okay.
By Jove, it's number 1.
And here we are at number 1 with the Pokemon TCG / Keyforge. Steve let me combine them because it was a pretty obvious choice, but it's essentially the main TCGs that I play. Although Keyforge arguably isn't a TCG. But beyond that, I have enough decks that I'm sure it could be considered a TCG. Yeah, I absolutely love both of them. I don't know which I'd rate higher at this point. I think I love Pokemon more, but I'm better at Keyforge, and so it comes in swings and roundabouts. I adore building decks with Pokemon and with Keyforge. I love that I can just pick it up and go, and I like the expansions they're bringing out. I think they're great. I think the theme is lovely. It's still upholding, and I think both of the games have sound mechanics that just will stand the test of time.
I really liked playing Magic the Gathering back in the day. So the whole, you said, describe the kind of deck construction stuff before you actually get to play. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, me too.
So I can totally see the attraction of something like Pokemon. I'm assuming it's similar.
Very similar, yeah, to Magic, yeah. I do play Magic, but I only draft and pre-release because the deck building is the bit that I love. Yeah. So that's where I kind of get my Magic fix.
And then going from that into Keyforge, because I played Keyforge a bit, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it works really, really well.
Yeah.
I just don't have time to play TCGs.
I think the reason, there's Magic and Bridge are on my top 10, that you have a different crowd of people you play with, and so it's a way to meet friends you wouldn't always meet. There are some people, weirdly, who don't have board game nights, but you'll meet them at Keyforge events. So there'll be Keyforge players or there'll be Pokemon players that don't come in and play Catan or Azul or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so it gives you the reason I think they're so great games is because I have my own little world when I play Magic and Bridge, and I go off and meet people and doing all these things.
Yeah.
And it's a different crowd of friends that I like with a common interest. So I think that's one of the reasons that I rate these games so highly, is because
the social element is just so... It's just absolutely brilliant. It's just...
And so
I've never imagined having so many friends in different groups, like you say, and how that's brought us together, and how I'd have never have met most of these people. And again, they wouldn't come to things like board game nights for one reason or another. Although some of them have started to, just being in the cafe just happens, doesn't it? But honestly, I just think that for the social element of it all, I can't beat it. And the fact that I can go visit my family in the south and I will rock up to a Pokemon or a Keyforge event, and you just feel welcome, and you know some people because you've seen them at events at UKGE and things like that, and then you realise that there's actually people that you knew that you didn't know played that game, and you're like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? And then you just, because they're from a different part of your world, but then you realise, oh, actually we have this common interest as well. And I just think it's pretty unbeatable.
I think Keyforge has done extremely well since it came out. I think in terms of people, it's unique. Every deck's unique, and you think, well, some decks just won't be very good or playable. Well, some are bad than others, but you can play them. You can play every single deck, and it works. Every single deck works. Maybe not as good as some other ones. And then there's a handicapping system as well. So when you take these to tournaments, if you do well in a tournament, the software adds a chain to your deck and makes it worse.
Ah, that's clever.
Yeah.
And so you basically, if you've got 3 chains or something, you've got 3 turns where you have one fewer card in your hand at the start of the game, which means you don't get off to the same explosive starts you might have done.
Yeah. It's excellent. Yeah. So I think
they've done very well.
Yeah. And they're trying to vary the formats as well, which is really nice. They're upkeeping the sets. There isn't a rotation system as such in Keyforge, which is really nice as well, because I can play any deck that I've got from whenever. But they do rotate out factions and houses for the set. So they've only just done this for the very first time. So we've waved goodbye to Mars and Sanctum, and we've said hello to the Star Alliance and Saurians. So we now, in the New Worlds Collide decks, you can get those 2 new factions, but you won't see the old ones. But that doesn't stop me buying an old Age of Ascension deck and playing with that instead. That doesn't stop me, and I can still play with it, and it'll still be just as good, and they still uphold against each other. And I think that's a real crucial thing that they've nailed, is that I can play any deck from any set, and it's going to hold up.
That's a really great idea.
Yeah.
Good.
So it's keeping it fresh, and it's keeping it lively. And I think Pokemon is taking off more than ever as far as my world is concerned. I've played for quite a while, but I had a bit of a break when I went to university to save a bit of money. And I came back, and the whole scene just seemed to explode a bit in the Midlands. And it was great because I had lots of new friends. In the South, there's no Pokemon scene really. And so when I came and lived here, I was like, oh my goodness, brilliant. And then obviously got into the GCG quite heavily. But yeah, it's just, if you play any sort of TCG, that essentially is my version of number 1, because that is what I like best. I love my board games. I'd never ever say that I didn't. But I think for the social element, for the variety of play you can get, for the social element, it just excels.
All right.
So yeah, thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you have any comments on any of my top 10, or if you think something that I might like based on these games that I haven't played maybe, pop it in the comments and I'll give it a shot and I'll answer what I thought. So if there's anything similar to any of these, please give me some recommendations, because that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Can I just say, I think it's an excellent selection of games you've come up with a possible cockroach poker exception in there. Because I wasn't really sure what would be in your top 30. I mean, I obviously played a fair number of games with you, and you seem to like this, not so much this, but no, it was a really interesting selection of games.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be shocked by a few, hopefully. I love my heavier games, but I think the ones that really shine for me are kind of my midweight or fun games sometimes. So I think that's where a few of those really shone for me. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. Please chuck us a like and a subscribe. Have a look at our Facebook page. Check out our Instagram. We're always on there doing some new fun things. And we'll see you all later. Bye.
Bye.